Okay, folks, I'm going to go over a few things if you're using the BlendTree that might be causing problems. So I have my player here and children objects that are animator and the ground check. You probably won't have this other stuff yet unless you've been following the videos, but I have some platforms. So basically, for my character here, I have a couple animations. So sometimes you can't see animations here unless they're applied to like a player or animator. So we can see, okay, if I drag that in there, we can't really see the animation. The other way is if I double click this and click the sprite here, I can kind of see what the animation is. So my fall is just 1 frame because he'll continually fall. My idle is just him standing there, but some of you have moving ones to multiple frames. My jump is 2 frames. Actually, I think I need to copy this one. And let's see if I can copy it. Or I guess I could go to these, do like standing one there too, maybe. Okay. So that's kind of how we have that working. And then in the script, went through, we can close these windows if we need to, lock them, etc. If you want a window to stay open, even when you're moving through different things up here, a good way to do it is just lock it. You can click lock there, it won't move. So this way, I can keep it on the space layer jump even as I move through other things. So that can be handy, like if you want to keep something on player, even while you click on other stuff to drag into it, you can lock it. So that's kind of handy. Just something to keep in mind. I'll unlock this one. You can get rid of this too. It's like I can close tab. All right. So my script, some of the things I had to add to it. So I already had a float horizontal movement. I added one for vertical. Most of the stuff was already here. Now I have a private Boolean, and remember Boolean is true or false. So I have the public animator anim. So this is what it is. It's public, meaning it can be accessed by any function. Public also means that you can see it in the inspector. So if it's a header, it looks like this, like a title. And if it's public, you can actually access it here and change its value in the inspector in Unity. If it's private, you don't have that option to change it directly in Unity. They both serve their own purposes, right? But down here, I have this public animator anim, so that's the name I've given the animator, the specific animator component I'm using here. So that gets referenced a little bit. I believe. Oh, and private Boolean facing right equals true. So this is tell if you're facing right and using true false logic. Here we have anim equals get component in children animator. So it's looking for an animator component that's a child of something else, which this is, right? It's the animator that's a child of player. So that's why we're using that there. Okay, so void start, when this starts out, is going to assign RB to be our rigid body component. And anim is going to be our get component children animation. Void update rb.velocity equals new vector. And then it's going to call a couple of functions every time it updates, and it's going to run these to check them constantly. So one is handle animations. And what that does is, because here we have move, which is the horizontal movement, which is equal to context, is reading the value of the x, like are they moving, which direction x, and it's saving that in horizontal movement. And then we have handle animations. So that's animation.setFloat. And this is where it's getting that horizontal movement in x, which is this whole thing here, is getting that value of the x movement. And it's assigning it to that x velocity that we made in the animator and setting that float. So this is a component. The dot means this is a part of the animator. So if we go back here and double click on this, this float that we have. For x velocity here. That is how we're controlling it through code. So it's actually taking the input from the keyboard or whatever they're using, and through that code applying it to this x velocity, and using it to control the animator. It's doing it here. The animator's float is being controlled by the x velocity value we set up in the BlendTree using this horizontal movement, which it gets by reading the actual x value of where their movement on the stick or keys is. Okay, we have this handle flip. So if horizontal movement is greater than 0 and you are not, an exclamation before an equal sign means not equal to, or if you put it in front of a variable, it means not facing right. So for a handle flip, if the horizontal movement is greater than 0 and you're not facing right, then it's going to call this function called flip, which is down here, where it rotates this by 180 degrees on y. So it just flips it. Okay, so if horizontal movement is greater than 0 and not facing right, it's going to flip it, and it's going to say that facing right equals true. We're facing right. Else, if that is not true, if horizontal movement is greater than 0 and we are facing right, then flip and facing right equals false. I probably should have flipped these. That's right. I think the way I implement it later, I kind of reversed them, so that's fine. We get to switch this to false and this to true if we wanted. So basically, this means you have to be moving for this to happen. You're not going to flip just standing there. So if you're moving at all in the x, and if you're not facing right, so you can kind of see how that works, right? Once again, flip is just going to flip it on y, which is the up and down line. So it basically just makes a mirror image of it. Okay, so let's see how that works. It's not fully figured out yet, but this should kind of get us where we need to be, pretty close at least. So if I hit play, now remember, you don't want to change anything. This is easy to forget. You don't want to change anything while this is in play mode. Anything you change over here will often not be saved. So you'll make a bunch of changes and then nothing. Okay, so I'm moving and I'm jumping, but notice my character is not following the animations. So, one thing I started to say earlier and didn't really get to finish was that there is this loop here. So if it's something that should loop, fall doesn't really loop, it's just one frame. Idle's one frame, but jump does loop. Depending on how you set it up. Shoot would loop, walk would definitely loop. So you'll notice that has to loop because we want that to go all the way to the end and then repeat immediately. All right, so do you kind of check out these loops, make sure some things loop if they should and some don't. That can be another issue. All right, so go back and take a look here what might be going wrong. This is having some kind of error. It's not from the code, it's something we'll have to fix separately. Port that's having a problem. Okay, so let's see if we can figure out what's going on as far as why this gets stuck in the fall animation. So basically what's happening is if you fall at all, you get stuck in fall. And then it won't go to move or anything else. So it could be a problem in BlendTree or the code. And I'm guessing it's probably something to do with these states here. So to the jump one, and once again if I double click this, this is the jump. Notice these have their own individual loops too. So fall does not loop. Jump. I think since we start out normal and then we go like that, we'd want to probably have just those two frames. I don't think we need to loop it, but we can play it by ear. Go back to our base layer here and we'll check these transitions. So basically you will go from idle to jump if Oh, I made another one to see if you're touching the ground. Okay, so if you're not touching the ground, you would be jumping. And if you are touching the ground, then you would go back to idle. And you can see by the way these arrows are going. So jump to idle would happen when you are touching the ground. So I made this variable called touch grass I have to institute. Now I do have a ground check thing, but the problem is I figured out the way it would work with this. It might get a little complicated because this is already used for stuff with the jump. So if I make a new variable like touch grass, I might have to go up here somewhere, say something like private pool so I'm going to assume I'll put that's false. Let me just double check I spelled that right. Touch grass. And so I need to connect my touch grass to this animation one. Sort of like we did animations float. Now we'll set this to touch grass. We'll connect it to the one we have in the code here. So there's several ways I could probably do this. We have one that detects if we're grounded, if we're touching. So if that's already detecting it, we could probably just say that touch grass equals true if you're grounded. Let's just see what happens with that. And we'd probably also have to do this anim.setFloat thing. But we'd put it maybe down here. I guess we won't have to do that probably. Just trying to decide if we need to put is grounded as something checks in the update all the time. Oh, yeah, so this has to be a set bool. This is not a float. We have to set Boolean because it's true false. That's why it was kind of giving me a problem. That makes sense, right? Let's see if that fixes the error. Okay, we're still having some problems. So I just want to see what happens. Let's again make sure I always turn that off. Just want to see what happens if I happen to go in here and disconnect from my animation controller, either one of these. So if I mute those, okay, see, this is working fine. So it's something about that jump.